I want to thank you all for stepping up and doing this. So I know most everybody on the call, but I'm Kimberly Light, Director of Language Arts and Literacy for middle and high school. And I wanted to give you a little bit of context before we jumped into the training. So many of you will recall back in, I guess, like 2014 or 2015, when we first tried to adopt core resources for high school. We had a really hard time then finding anything that we felt was going to work. And of course, since then, the publishers of the core things have made some pretty significant adjustments, and we were able to go forward with a core adoption. But back in 2014, 2015, we just could not. But our vocabulary needs were so great at that time. And in high school, at that moment, it was all about like SAT, ACT. All of our data indicated that our kids needed some support with vocabulary. Many of you were already using Sadlier, so we wanted to kind of review it and open that up as a district. And sure enough, overwhelmingly, teachers are like, yes, this is a resource we need as a supplement. Well, we, did great with our implementation for a couple of years, but like with many things, there's kind of drift over time. And we've had a lot of new people come in to the district since that period. And we started having conversations about middle school and how we're going to address learning loss due to the pandemic, because you all know this, right? Like our kids have not been, well, for nearly 18 months, they were not speaking the way that we would want them to speak in to each other in a group setting, in class, and so on. So we've been really concerned about just vocabulary acquisition accelerated by the pandemic. And I mean, it looks like we're going to be here for a minute with the pandemic. So we wanted to address that while at the same time ensuring that we kind of stayed the course with really providing that rigorous vocabulary instruction. So moving beyond just learning loss. The other thing that occurred that kind of led us here is that we had done a lot of reflection on our own instructional framework. And when you go on the lock now, you'll notice that how do I fit it all in document, there's a pretty significant addition that we made at the start of this year, and that is in regards to explicit vocabulary instruction. So the irony in our old framework is that we've always valued vocabulary instruction, and we've said it needed to be explicit, but we didn't call it out in our framework. And if you don't do that, then it's not going to be explicit. So several things have been colliding. And so although this resource is not new for high school, we are revisiting it for high school. And I wanted you all to be part of it since it is a new resource for middle school. And hopefully in the years to come, you'll see, especially in that 9th grade years, kids coming to you with just a stronger background in vocabulary work. So that's kind of what led us here today. The reason that you all are here is that we learned some hard lessons with our adoption of the HMH core resource in grades 9 through 11. And that is that, when you are talking about between middle and high school language arts teachers, we're talking about like 1,200 language arts teachers. There's no way everybody's going to attend training. So we have to lean on great teacher leadership in the building. And that's what you all are here for, is to help provide that teacher leadership to ensure that our teachers are using it. And so we appreciate you stepping up and taking this on. And I hope you all will be excited about kind of dusting this resource off and reintroducing it to the teachers in your school and in your building. And we'll continue to talk about your leader messages for why this is so important. And I think you'll see today, as we go through the training, kind of what it is about this particular resource that leads us to believe it adds tremendous value for all of our learners, students with IEPs, English language learners, our very most gifted students, and so on. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jane Sharp and Ellen Edmonds. They are our Sadlier representatives. It's kind of funny though, because I actually feel like they're on the team. I've talked to Jane and Ellen by email. I think I talk to you all more than I talk to my husband these days. So they are a great support, and I want you all to build that relationship with them as well, so that you can reach out to them. So ladies, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, and teacher leaders. And Kimberly has given you the mantle. And Kimberly, what you said was just beautiful. In fact, I took notes and just painted the picture that they need to see and we need to see. So thank you. That was very, very thought-provoking. And we're here to serve you and to serve you well, and just keep the trainings going as you need them. If you need it one-on-one, whatever it takes, we want you to excel, because therefore the students will excel. So we're here for you. And Ellen is our wonderful VP of Learning, and she's going to take us through the training today.
And Ellen, before you get started, I did send an email to all the teachers, one confirming you had access in the teacher portal, but also to locate your teacher's edition if you can. So far, people have had kind of a hard time locating that teacher's edition. Although that we're not going to re-provide it to every high school teacher, we will certainly provide it to you all. So if you are missing the print edition, just send an email and we will get them over to you. So with that, Ellen, for real, we're ready for you now.
Okay, thank you. And thanks, Jane. Today, my goal is to re-familiarize you or to reinforce what you already know, depending on your particular implementations in the past. I am not going to spend time today talking about why we teach vocabulary, best practices in vocabulary instruction. We will spend a few minutes when in January we meet with teachers on that, but we really want to draw on you to support implementation. And as Kimberly noted, if there's not someone in the building who a colleague can quickly pull to assist, what happens is they suffer in silence and they never implement. I actually joined many of your colleagues, if they're still in schools, when we first rolled this out. I had the pleasure of being on site, which is a little different from our current circumstances. And we do introduce a program like this, but know that it's the ongoing support that's really critical for successful implementation. So I want to make sure you understand the basic functionality so that when you hear it again in January, you'll feel really confident that you can support teachers. And so in January, if in the middle of the session, a teacher has difficulty, whichever one of my team is presenting won't have to stop what they're doing to coach that person, but can instead say, if you have difficulty along the way logging in or accessing something, here's your local person. And I know Kimberly will have shared that roster to support implementation. I think for the most part, it is a really straightforward digital resource. However, every program out there can be improved. So I will say up front, we value our partnership with you. If there are places that you feel like we need to, in future months, think about making some adjustments, we're open to hearing that. Of course, we have to budget it time and human resource wise, but we certainly don't want to ignore your valuable input. So beyond thinking of you as a support for your colleagues, we also value you as our partner in thinking about ways to improve what we offer. Unfortunately, I can't demonstrate from your platform because I am not an employee of your district. So I have asked for one of your colleagues to help me out by sharing a couple of screenshots. What I will tell you is that your colleague was a middle school classroom educator. So you'll see icons for middle school, not for high school, but this is where you would begin choosing third-party vendor and your particular grade level and language arts, and click go. And then you should be presented with book icons and a direct link for that particular resource for Sadlier at the particular level you're in, and you would click on that. So I think most of you know that, but if you're not familiar with accessing the resources, you certainly would want to start with that. Once you're there, then my experience and your experience would be the same. So I'm going to actually get out of those two PowerPoint slides and go directly to Sadlier Connect for the rest of our time together. So your next screen should look like this, depending on your particular level. It takes you directly to what I consider a table of contents. So down the left-hand side is the table of contents, and you have a scroll bar as well as being able to scroll in general. So you're able to access those resources. And when you click on a node or entry in the table of contents, the relevant resources display in the center panel. The structure of the program is that there are units of study followed by unit reviews, word study units, cumulative reviews. And that's a consistent structure across all of the grade levels. So there will be 3 units of study where 20 words are introduced in each unit. And across 2 weeks, there will be a series of exercises and instruction that would be provided so that students deeply learn those words, then followed by a review of those 3 units, spaced learning, so that students move those vocabulary words from short-term to long-term memory. And then word study. We are supposed to explicitly teach vocabulary words, but Isabel Beck's research also shows, and lots of other research, that we need to explicitly teach word learning strategies. And so the word study unit exercises and instruction support that. The cumulative review continues to review the 6 previous units' words so that students are, again, continuing to be exposed to them and retain those words. And what the research shows is with that pattern of review, 10 years later, students should be able to use those words. We're aiming for deep word knowledge, not acquaintance. So we want students to be able to understand what that word means in the context of a piece of text. And if it's a multiple meaning word, to know which meaning of that word's used. We're looking for students to be able to use that word in their writing and to use that word in classroom discussion, not just speaking, but also listening, knowing what that word means if a teacher or a classmate uses that word. There is a beginning of the year test. You all will not need to use that this year. There are 2, actually. One is diagnostic. That is not relevant to your particular implementation because you are focused on grade level instruction. The pretest typically is paired with a test that is at the end of the year to be able to measure students' growth. You could administer it this year, but because you're starting mid-year in many cases, that's not going to demonstrate the full impact of the program because it's going to assess the full set of units words, and so it might end up skewing your perspective, and I think that's probably not going to be very helpful. So this year you might not use it. Next year that might be something Kimberly and other administrators would guide you to do. But that's the purpose of those 2 beginning of the year assessments. And you can, when you click on an entry or node in the table of contents, you can leave it expanded as you see here, or you can collapse it so that you're able to see all of the entries or nodes at one time. And what you'll note is that there is instruction, and instruction is incorporated in other places, but there are 2 primary elements of instruction that would be under this node. Student practice, this is what I would consider non-negotiable exposures to the vocabulary for students to really learn those words. Additional practice, not every student masters a word with the same number of exposures. Stronger students need 8 to 10 exposures. Students that are striving learners may need up to 17 exposures. So additional practice provides that opportunity, and we'll look at all of this in just a moment. It is important to assess. There's good research that shows that accountability makes a difference in students' vocabulary acquisition. So there's a pre-built assessment. There is an item bank that allows teachers to create additional practice or assessments. There are games and study aids, and these are not frivolous. There's a body of research that shows that playing games with vocabulary helps us really understand those words and learn those words. And graphic organizers are really critical, particularly with an English learner or a striving learner. So you'll see those graphic organizers incorporated. So I'm going to expand instruction. And the first thing that you'll see are that there are 2 items with little green icons beside them. And you'll notice that there are icons to the right. And in the case of the unit passage and definitions, that center icon is grayed out. The reason it's grayed out is that students may always access the unit passage and the definitions without teachers having to assign those. So those are always available to students from their particular viewpoint. Instructional videos are provided. Those must be assigned for students to have access. So you see that assign icon provided. The video icon is here. The question mark indicates that resource has some level of interactivity, but it is not the type of interactivity that would be submitted. And the icon you see by the unit passage indicates there's audio. So I'm going to click on the unit passage. And again, I'm really talking functionality here. We're not talking use. There is an audio version of the passage so that students could listen to it. So they would be able to.
Theater, then and now. Historical nonfiction.
So the passage is available in audio format. If teachers wanted to project this passage, they can go full screen. There's the full screen icon. They can magnify the font if they would like to do that. They are able to print this passage if there's a reason that they need to print that passage. And they can annotate. This center icon in that yellow panel is their pen, and they could choose the color of the pen. So if I wanted to focus on a couple of the words that are being covered, like perhaps unkempt, I can circle it. I could indicate that prefix and be able to discuss that with students. I could also do some work to indicate what part of that particular sentence gives me a context clue to understand that vocabulary. So we'll talk when we get together with the teachers about best practices in using the passage, but that's the functionality of the passage. The definitions, again, are available to students, and you can see that it's more than definitions. So we have an explanation of the word, the pronunciation of the word, the part of speech, an example sentence, and this is the little bit of interactivity. And while it might not seem critical, there's actually good research that suggests that keying in that word is helpful for students. Keying in synonym is equally beneficial for students. So that is provided. You can look at a single word and definition at a time, or you can click on multiple and see all of them at one time. So teachers can use that, or students can use that in whatever manner they would choose. When you click print for this, it will print an abbreviated form of the definitions. So it will be the word, and I can actually show you, and this is one where we don't need to scramble it, but most of the printing allows scrambling. You can see it is the word, the part of speech, and the definition, so that it's on a single page as a resource. Students have access to the word list and definitions in the practice exercises, but some students really like that visual representation. And if teachers did not want to key in the words in that blank, they can show the answers and it auto-fills with a particular word, so teachers would have that option. Those are the two primary instructional pieces. There are other elements that are also intended. The instructional videos provide audio and visual support for a word. So you're able to play the video.
Adulterate. Adulterate. Adulterate is a verb meaning to make worse by the addition of something of lesser value. The cook accidentally adulterated the stew with a whole cup of black pepper. In my house, we use natural cleaning products that are not adulterated with chemicals. Now, let's hear you say adulterate.
And you can go full screen with that. It is, of course, a resource for students, but teachers may also choose to use that. We know discussing the vocabulary words, focusing on a couple of words each day for more in-depth discussion is really critical in acquisition. And then very important elements, the student practice. The practice includes definitional and contextual exercises, and an opportunity for students to apply the words they're learning in writing. So everything would auto score except for the writing piece. That would be something teachers would need to grade. And again, the way that you assign is to click on this assign icon. I'm going to click on that icon. And I chose one exercise, but I would expect that for most teachers in high school, you're going to assign all of the unit exercises at one time. So I would click add resources, and I would check each of the exercises, probably those instructional videos also, that I want to assign to my students. I could assign additional practice at this time, but I am not likely to want to do that. So I would just click add. And I can assign to a single class, or I can assign to multiple classes. So your choice if you want to assign to multiple classes. I could assign, and I don't have another 10th grade class, but I could assign it to the number of classes I would like to assign it to. I indicate a start date and time and an end date and time. So generally, if you're going to study for a couple of weeks, I would give students that period of time. You can add a grace period. So the end date is a time when you're going to get notified if students have submitted. But if you want students to be able to continue to submit after the due date, you would click grace period, and you would add the amount of time you wanted students to have to submit that particular exercise. It defaults to an end time of 11:45 p.m. That's probably not an issue for high school. Some parents of an elementary student might be a little concerned about that end time. So you can always adjust the time if you'd like to a time that would not imply spending the whole night working on an assignment. And when you click save, then the students that you have made that assignment for would get that assignment. So with additional practice, the same holds true. There are a number of additional practice opportunities, including a practice quiz. You'll notice that there are green check marks by the first 4 items. Those are fully interactive items. And you'll notice that there is a question mark by the practice quiz. Students will get feedback on this. All students will get grades on and feedback on all items, but this is designed to be more of a non-graded resource. So it has that question mark. It's interactive, but not intended to be used in the same way that the other assignments are. There's a practice quiz worksheet, a practice worksheet. Those are assignable, but you'll note that those are PDFs. So those are not interactive. If you assign those to students, you would need to decide if you wanted them to annotate a PDF, which you could require the annotation of, or you could just assign it for them to have access to it. So your choice in terms of the way that you would like to handle that particular assignment. If you look at that additional practice, just be aware that there are some open-ended items like timed essay that would require teacher grading. These are what I would consider the passage-based reading, the identifying sentence errors, and the timed essay would be more older approaches to vocabulary support. So you think about, for instance, the older SAT approach, that those would fit into that category. Some teachers really like that sort of practice, so it's there as optional, but it is indeed optional. These are all considered optional. The assessment is a pre-built assessment. You may also edit that assessment, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So to assign the assessment, and let me just show you that it includes pronunciation, parts of speech, spelling. It includes definitions, synonyms. There may be some items there that you would prefer not to include. So teachers have the ability to take that base assessment, go over to the 3 dots for more, and choose edit assessment. And I have a loaner PC that has a calibration issue, and I'm probably not going to be able to edit this assessment because of that. It doesn't know that I've clicked when I click with things. I'm so sorry. But what you would do is uncheck. I'll keep trying, but this loaner PC is a little clunky. You'll uncheck items to create a modified assessment. There it goes. It finally found itself. So I might not want to include the pronunciation items. I would simply uncheck those items. Maybe there are other items that I would not want to include, maybe because I want the time to be limited. But once I have decided what I want to eliminate, I've unchecked those, I save it, I give it a new name. So and that assessment no longer shows up under the assessment view. It now will show up under custom assessments. And so that is there for you to assign. When you assign a unit test or any assessment, it is important to keep in mind the time frame, because students shouldn't see the assessment before class, I would assume, shouldn't see it after class. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So again, I'm going to select my particular grade, and I'll note that I have created a group. You as teachers can create subgroups. So if I wanted to give this assessment not to my whole class, but to a subgroup, I could select that subgroup. This allows differentiation very quickly. So there's my small group that I'm going to assign it to. And I'm going to assign it for the 24th. That's a really cruel thing to do, isn't it? At 8 a.m. And I'm going to have it be completed by 8:30 a.m. So 30 minutes to do that particular assignment, no grace period. I can modify this assessment. The multiple choice items can be modified to have fewer choices. So you notice that I assign this to a small group of students. this group of students happen to have IEPs. So rather than, and the IEPs indicate that they should have fewer distractors in their assessment. So I'm going to limit the number of distractors to 3 choices instead of the normal. This is also where I would scramble questions if I wanted to preclude students sharing with others what they're doing. So you can scramble your questions. And then I would click Save. It warns me that this assessment is in the future. I go ahead and submit it. That's my intention. And then that would be available for students in the future. There is an item bank. And an item bank is intended to be used in lots of different ways. You can build more practice. You can build your own assessment. There are teachers that like to do a quiz. After 5 days of instruction, you could create a quiz. You can work from a single unit or you can work from multiple units. So if you want a whole category of items, so maybe I want all of the antonyms, I would just check in the box next to antonyms and it added those 30 questions automatically. Or I can click on the plus to expand the items and I can choose the items I would like. You should notice that there will be at times different tenses of the word. Words might be in plural. So you'll want to, and of course, multiple meanings, you'll see those multiple meanings. You just choose the words that you're going to want to have assessed. So if I'm working with a student who, again, has an IEP or an advanced student, I can tailor this to that student and give them additional practice or a different assessment. Once I've chosen the items that I'd like to include, I can preview it. From here, I could delete something if I'd like to delete it. Just click on the trash can to delete it. If I'm comfortable with what I have put together, I can save it. I can name it. Add my directions. And then I have that assessment. I can also share that alternative assessment with other teachers. So I would just click share assessment and I can add as many teachers, check as many teachers as I would like to. So sometimes grade level teachers get together and create units. One will do 4 units and somebody else will do another 4 units so that you get alternative assessments or support for particular populations of students and the work is not on the back of one individual. You are also able to copy and edit the assessment. So you can create the assessment this year. It's available to you next year. But maybe I want to make 1 or 2 adjustments. Maybe there was an item that students consistently found confusing. I'd like to delete it. I copy and edit it. The old version remains, and I have the new version of that particular assessment. So that gives me lots of additional resources. You'll notice that we left analogies in there. There are some teachers who really love that stretch thinking for students. I wouldn't suggest analogies for all students, but that's the sort of thing that you find in the item bank will be additional supports for particular needs. The games and study aids are always available to students, but if teachers want to be able to track whether students use them or not, they'll need to assign them. So here's the assign icon again that would be used. There is a specific report, the activity report, that lets teachers know whether students have used the resources. So it's optional. Teachers can not assign and students can access as they need, or teachers can assign. The iWords would be the audio version of the words, very similar to what we saw in the video. The flashcards are intended for students to use for additional practice. So they can print them or they can use the flashcards. Some students like to write the word on the front, write a sentence on the back. They like to do some additional work. Sometimes they put a visual on the flashcard. So that's a reason that some students like to print The graphic organizers are a great resource. The word square is very much like the Frayer model. So you can drag your word over, you can use the annotation tools, so you can use the text box to key in, you can draw something for how it looks. Those are printable if someone wanted to print the graphic organizers. So those are also assignable if teachers would like for students to use those resources. The unit reviews include lots of resources. Some of them I think are particularly beneficial. Vocabulary for Comprehension has a lot of application. It is very similar to state assessment items. So I don't remember if Georgia still does an exit exam for high school students, but very similar also to ACT and SAT. So a good resource. So it includes a couple of comprehension questions as well as the vocabulary questions. You'll see that there's SAT and ACT test prep. The green check mark means that it's interactive, so students can have it assigned and use it digitally. A teacher can always print it, have a paper pencil version to assign to someone or give to someone if you would like to do that. That's why the PDF version is there. So if they're trying to mock the experience that students might have, that would be available. There are other practice opportunities and a mastery test for review, and then games and study aids. You'll see a lot of support for remembering, retaining those vocabulary words, and that is intentional. We know how important that is, but not all of those assignments would, of course, be necessary. Just providing some review is important. As I mentioned, we need to explicitly teach word learning strategies. So you'll see the classical root work. We know how important morphology is to students building their own vocabulary. We really encourage teachers to do a quick mini lesson before students do the practice. So that's just about 5 minutes of instruction, and then students would engage in the practice. All of the resources are here that we saw with the other elements that are used instructionally. It is important for students to understand nuances of meaning. So denotation and connotation are covered. Figurative language, again, these align with your standards also. So thinking about what students need to master to also be proficient in grade level standards. And then you've got your cumulative review. And again, you'll see the similarities. Enriching your vocabulary is a little bit of a stretch exercise or enrichment exercise with some technology enhanced items related to it. So it can be a fun way of continuing to use the vocabulary words that students are learning. And then you have the more traditional opportunities for students. So that's the process for assigning any of your resources. And once I have assigned something, it should be available to students. So if you want to, and I just want to double check my 10th grade class for a moment. So just using my old brain. Okay, I'm just going to log out for a minute and go in as a student, and then we'll come back and look at reports and other resources. So if students have an assignment that you have made, this is the view that they'll see. They won't see these books, they'll see their particular book there, but this would be the view that they would see. There's a little different view that they would see with no assignments, but my assumption is that the first time your students are going to be introduced to this, they would have an assignment ready to do. So I have a set of assignments. I can see the due dates for those assignments. So you can see the videos that I assigned. You can see all of those assignments that I've given to students. you can see that I haven't started any of them. I can view that assignment, and I've got my word list available if I need to reference my word list. And I'm just going to randomly select a couple of these just so that we've got something to work with. So students can save. They can save and exit or save and continue. If they save and exit, then they'll see this as an in progress assignment. So they would go back to that assignment to continue to work. They can submit the assignment. It's going to warn them that they have skipped some items, so they can continue or they can submit. And then once they have done that, they've got grades available to them. Because I provided a grace period for this, students would not be able to see the item level detail. If I don't use a grace period, then students would be immediately able to go in and see what was correct and incorrect. If students skip an item, this is what they see. The authors of the program are adamant about not providing the correct answers for students. They believe students should go back and study the vocabulary words rather than memorizing, which is why you see that the correct or incorrect answer is noted. But if it's incorrect, we don't supply a correct answer. That's intentional. So that's essentially the student view. If a student wants to access the resources, they would click on My Library. They're not going to have all of these. They'll simply have the book cover for vocabulary, and they would go to their particular level, and they will have the unit passage. They'll have the definitions, the instructional videos. They'll have additional practice items that they can access, and they'll have games and study aids and graphic organizers available to them. And under the unit reviews, they'll have the games as a part of the resources provided for them. So tests, the non-negotiable practice, students don't have access to it without it being assigned to them. And your assignment means that you're going to get data back when students have completed it. So as a teacher, once students have completed an assignment, if you are in your particular book, let me just go back to the book just for, which is where you would land first. You have this menu board above that. And you can go to the assignment choice, and it will give you a view of all classes, all assignments, unless you have something to grade. If you have something to grade, it defaults to the assignment you need to grade to try to encourage you to grade that particular assignment. You can always filter differently. So I could choose a particular section if I wanted to, and the assignments relative to that. I could choose already graded assignments or active assignments and apply the filter. And then I'm only going to see those assignments that are relative to that particular class and section, if that's what I chose. You can see the unit test I assigned. It's pending because it's going to happen in the future. You see the pencil with the little caret or down arrow icon next to it. I can delete this assignment because no student has done it. You can only delete assignments that students have not completed. So I can delete that particular assignment. You'll remember I assigned all of the unit practice. It collapses those, so visually you're not looking at all 7. You can click on the caret or down arrow and see all of those assignments. And you can see that there are assignments that have not been started yet. Again, I could delete them. I can also edit that assignment. So I could change the end time if I wanted to change the end time. I have to be mindful of the grace period, but perhaps I wanted to make it in January when students would need to do it. So I can extend the time and save that from that assignment view. You'll also note that as soon as one student completes the assignment, you have a new icon show. That is allowing you to view a report that shows the student results. So I have a lot of students who have not started it yet. It's not a late submission, but I can see Katya's assignment. I can see the items that were correct and incorrect. I can see all of the items that she skipped. I would be able to see everyone else's too. If I drill into an item, I can see by clicking on the number there who answered correctly, and the same would be with who answered incorrectly. And I can actually view that item from here so that it gives me more detail to make decisions from. If an item in the assignment view has expired, so you see some that have expired, that means students did not complete that assignment. I can edit that assignment and extend the time period for students. So and if I'm going to add a grace period, I would need to do that. And then when I click save, that student's going to have additional time to complete that particular assignment. If an assignment is graded, so you can see that writing words in action is graded, then I can no longer extend that assignment. I have to reassign that assignment because students have completed it, submitted it. I can reassign it. It retains the initial score and results, but gives the opportunity to go back and revisit that assignment. And you'll notice this new icon that pops up. That is the grade icon. If I had not graded that assignment, I could go from here to grade it. I can also regrade that assignment. So it will show the student's name. It will show their response. It will allow you to change the number of points that you would give if you're regrading. You can add notes for the student, go to the next question, and or exit grading. So your choice in terms of the grading of that particular assignment. So this is, an opportunity to really monitor progress. That also shows up on the dashboard, but you're not entering the dashboard. So the best way for you to get that view is from that assignment lens. So that gives you a quick view of the status of the assignments that have been given. Reports include a series that you may find helpful to you. The activity report is the one that you would select for your looking at the games and the resources that students have used. The student tracking report shows students' use of the system. Student trend report shows the last 8 weeks of grades and shows it graphically. So this is the activity report. It shows what your activity is, what the class score is, more about the number of completions. You can select a particular class and look at that particular class if you want to. So you would be able to do that. I don't think I have anything for this. You can choose a particular resource that you want to look at. So you can drill down and get more information from that. Student scores would be exactly what you would expect. It's student grades. You can look at all classes, an individual section, a group, or all students, an individual student if you wanted to look at an individual student for whatever time period you would like, and whatever unit you would like. You can apply the filter, you'll see the results. You can print this or you can export it. It's a comma separated file, so it can go directly into an Excel spreadsheet or into a numbers spreadsheet so that you're able to use that grading to do whatever you need to do in terms of homework, grades, or other things, participation. Class assessment starts out at a more global level and then drills down to that item level detail that we were seeing earlier. So you're able to look at all of your students. You all don't go up and down levels. You would only see a single level for students, and you would be able to drill in and see students practice, see their assessments. You can look at this item level detail. So you're able to see all of the items. You're able to see and sort by alphabetical order by score, drill into an item. Here are the 4 students who answered incorrectly. So maybe I would have a conversation with them. If I see that there's an item that many students are having difficulty with, then I might want to have class discussion about that particular item. So this might be an example of that item because I've got 13 students who answered incorrectly. So I perhaps would want to view that item, see a little more about that. So that gives me data that I can use instructionally. Those are the primary features that are available. What I'd like to do is make sure you're really comfortable with the most important first steps for teachers. So to me, the most important first steps really are about assigning, making sure that they're clear on how to assign, and being able to quickly monitor the status of assignments. So knowing that I don't need to assign the unit passage and definitions, that's why it's grayed out. Knowing that I click on the icon to assign, that I can assign a single resource or I can add resources. And knowing that I can assign to a single class or multiple classes. If I've already assigned something, you will see everything in red that indicates to you that you're doubling up on an assignment. So it's not going to allow you to do that without notifying you. You can reassign in that way. It's not the best way to do it, but it keeps you from making an error in terms of your assignment process. So I want to pause for a few minutes, let you ask questions. I've covered a lot of territory. I can go back and revisit pieces. I've given you a general walkthrough of the primary program elements. I've learned through years of using this that that's about as much as most people can process, but some of you are using this and maybe have a deeper level question or something that you'd like to ask about.
I have a few questions.
Okay.
All right. So I'm Karen. I work at Gift Center West. Is it better if we start in January with Unit 1, or can we start with Unit 7, or does it matter?
It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
This is not sequenced in a way that gets progressively more difficult across the year.
Okay.
Because, of course, any class of students has quite a bit of variability in terms of where students are. Mm-hmm. So the expectation is that if you look at a unit of study, you're going to maybe need to give more practice to some students than others. What would be problematic with starting with lesson 7, if that's what you decided to do, is that cumulative review piece. Mm. You would do the reviews, the unit reviews, but you would not do the cumulative reviews, because the cumulative reviews would include words from lessons 1 through 6 or units 1 through 6. And students would not have been exposed to those. So it's probably better to start with Unit 1, but you could certainly make an adjustment, use the unit reviews, and then you could create your own cumulative review. Sometimes teachers ask if they could match a unit to what they're doing instructionally. Maybe the topic of the passage is relevant to something they're studying. And that's always fine as long as you provide for a review opportunity for students, but
Mhm.
you would have to create that review opportunity. It's not going to be automatically provided. And I'm not the instructional leader, so I shouldn't be telling you where to begin, but I want you to understand the pitfalls of the various approaches that you might take. And Kimberly and others would give you guidance about where to begin.
May I ask one more?
Of course.
All right. So when I look at the passage, I can't assign it, the reading passage. So would I just print it out for the kids?
They automatically have access to it in their account.
Gotcha. Okay.
So they should, be able to read it and or listen to the audio version of it before class and be able to follow along if you displayed it, or even if you didn't display it, if you're focusing on using context clues and morphology and modeling that to figure out what a few of the words mean.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly. But even with high school students, you have to make sure they know where to find the passage. So, going in and showing them, just as I showed you, that you click on the book cover and that resource is there for them. It's not in the assignment view, would be important for them.
All right. Thanks.
Other questions?
I have a question. Is there pre-test or post-test per each 3 units? I know there's the cumulative review type stuff, but do we get to know where they're at the beginning and then at the end, or?
There is not. Some teachers do create, I will just show you as an example. And theoretically, people have different concepts of what they're looking for. If you just do the custom assessment, build an assessment, the items that are probably most relevant would be the definitional items. So some teachers would just choose the 20 definitions that are, and some words would have multiple definitions, so multiple items. Choose those and create that. It's that simple to create a pre-test. And then the unit test serves as your post-test. So you would simply need to create pre-test. So if your school, for instance, decided that you wanted a pre and post for every unit, that would be one of those situations where I would encourage you to have a team of teachers create the pre-test just to save time and then share it with the other teachers. So somebody does units 1 through 3, et cetera. Diane, you had a question. I think you were next.
I think Miss Mickle from Collins Hill is actually before me.
Okay. Ms. Mickle then.
Hi. When I was looking at your screen, I noticed that on the score report, your scores were in percentages and mine show up as just answers correct. Is there a way that I can change that? And sorry if I missed it.
No, I didn't say that. And I really appreciate you bringing that up. That's a great question. So if you go to the caret next to your name, or your initials rather, your initials are in a red circle. There is something called account settings. If you click on account settings, that is where you would, and I'll tell you why I didn't cover it in just a second, but that's where you would change from points to percentages. So you would change that to percentage and save it. The reason I didn't cover that is that you all don't go to our dashboard. So these alert settings are not relevant to you. So I wasn't thinking about you needing to change those, but you in fact do want to change that to percentages. So thank you for catching that. I appreciate that.
No problem. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Ms. Benjamin.
Hi. Is there a lockdown browser available for using the online assessment functionality?
There isn't a lockdown browser. There is a setting that should be done by, and we can talk to your system administrators, that prevents students from accessing any of the other program resources during an assessment. We would certainly want to do that. It does not preclude students from, on a device using a different browser, because that is a device specific issue, and Sadlier is not in the device business. So all we can do is lock down access to our resources. We can't preclude access, but I assume that the district probably has something that allows you to lock down students access to other browsers when you're taking an assessment? Do you know?
We do, but this is so far out of the pieces that I know. So we might need to, Jane and Ellen follow up with Kim Moore's office so that she can get with David Dillard and the people who actually support all the technical stuff.
Okay, we'll certainly do that before we meet with teachers. Thank you that's a really important question, because unfortunately at the high school level and middle school level, students get pretty sophisticated in terms of using all resources to cheat themselves in the vocabulary learning process.
We have some of the most innovative students out there when it comes to this. They are very innovative.
It's interesting. I've been reading a lot. There have been a lot of Twitter back and forth about this and about what makes students cheat. And it's interesting. Some people believe it's grade pressure. Some believe that it's just a culture now that started with video games, really reinforcing that the faster you can get to your end result, the better. And the way you get there is by getting cheat codes. So,
well, all I know is it probably is taking triple the effort to game the system than it would be to just simply do it.
I know that's amazing, isn't it? That they
Yeah.
work so hard at cheating, but they do. That's absolutely the case. Karen, you had another question?
Yes, ma'am. SchoolNet is our testing platform. Is there a way to take a assessment from the Sadlier book website and get it to our SchoolNet system?
David Dillard would probably have to help us with that. Sounds like we've got a lot of comments and questions that I need to follow up with David on. I don't think there would be something that from our side would preclude that. I don't know what's involved. I know that we integrate with lots of other learning platforms like Clever and ClassLink and Canvas where that happens, but I honestly don't know in your platform what's required. I'll be happy. I now have 3 questions I need to follow up with David on, so I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you.
Ms. Finco? And if I mispronounce that, please forgive me.
It's fine. It's fine. That was right. I have a question that might be now a 5th question or 4th question for you to send to him. But on the front end, when you're ticking all the different classes that you want, that's easy because you can do that all at once. However, if you have to edit something and you're going to do it for all your classes, it's 10. We have 5, a gifted and an honor section potentially of all our classes or whatever. And so that's 10 sections we have to go back and make all those changes to. Is there any way that those can be combined so that we have maybe just like 9th grade language arts for us, or that we can combine and create? Because you can only create groups within one section as opposed to creating like a first period or a second period. So that would be really helpful for us.
That would not be a David question. That's my development team's question, and I will take that back to them.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly. Other questions? I think Ms. Grasso, is that?
It's Grosso, yes.
Okay.
Yes. So my question is, I saw where we can create our own assessment. And I was just wondering, when you create the assessment, are you able to remove or add words when you are building your own assessment? For example, we've been using or have continued using the Sadlier Oxford words for years, but with some of our classes, we've lessened the amount of words per unit and added in more roots because that's really our focus. And so I was just wondering if when you build your own, if you're able to remove some and kind of cultivate your own list, but still Sadlier Oxford words.
Not yet. You, of course, would be able to cross units. So you could pull words from other units if you wanted to. But at this point, we have, I'll tell you why we don't allow it, and it's very much under review, so it may change. But we did in the past allow teachers to add words and to edit what happened is that some teachers made spelling errors or answer errors or grammatical errors. And our customer service team would get calls from parents who were upset that we produced a resource with these errors in it. And it was impossible to explain to them that we didn't create those and we couldn't do anything about it. So we just don't have a team to vet those items, and we moved away from that. But there certainly, we're seeing such a move in that direction that that's something that's under consideration. It won't happen in the next few months, I don't think, but it might happen, in the next year.
So just for clarification, so I can't add roots, but am I able to remove words from the unit as I'm compiling?
If you wanted to create your own assessment
Yes.
or practice, you can choose the words you want to use.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you feel like you have enough that if you're joining the next session and hear this one more time, that if someone stopped you in the hallway or was having difficulty, that you could begin to give an answer, or you could connect them with the right people to get answers for them?
Yes.
I think that's really what I've seen when we don't put that in place and you do virtual training. It's one thing if we're all in the same room, then if someone has an issue, it's really easy to address that. But it's not easy when we're in these disparate places. Even though I'm in North Carolina and could get to you pretty quickly by car, I'm not able to address it right away. And so knowing that you're on site as their resource, I think will be reassuring and will allow us to move ahead in that brief period of time that we have with them, and support their implementation. So I'm very grateful for your willingness to serve in this role, and I think it's going to be beneficial. If between now and the beginning of January, you identify more things like Ms. Grosso, I'll get it right, and others have identified, Ms. Finco, that we need to try to work on from our perspective, please let me know. I can't promise that they'll all be done right away, but it's better for us to know what you'd like to see modified and have that on our work list, and we'll work diligently to try to address those. Similarly, if there's something that you think that I should approach differently or my team members, I'm not sure yet whether I'm going to have one of my colleagues do the sessions with teachers, that we should approach a little differently in the way that we roll it out and talk about it, let me know that, us know that. Or if there's a resource that you think would be helpful. We want this to be highly successful. And so you're our on the ground experts and will help us think through the way to make this the most effective rollout possible and support really strong implementation. So don't hesitate to let us know so that we can take advantage of your expertise.
We're going to send you all some more screenshots and perhaps a video. I logged in to my son's eClass page and sent screenshots for what I could see. I understand why he was so reluctant to share his login information. He has a very clever password. But Charlie Hollingshead is an 8th grade teacher at Cruz, and he's been in the tool quite a bit, and his kids are using it as well. And so he has been capturing a lot of the interaction between teacher and student and what that looks like. And we know that that is something that everybody wants to see. So kind of be on the lookout for that information too. And, I hated to kind of shut down the EL support, but let's focus on this. It's a lot easier to add a support to what we're doing in the core than say, oh, and by the way, let's add this too, when we need to really revisit what we're doing here. So I will talk to Lynette and let her know that several of you support English language learners directly or indirectly, and that the conversation came up. But that's not something that my office provides. So I will work with her just so she's aware of that additional ask. And Diane just asked for a community. Yes, I will definitely create one. We'll do a high school version. I'll also make a shared drive for you all as well, so that you can share things like when you capture screenshots or videos, whatever it might be. But we have found through a couple of other things that the team's chats are very, very effective when you all are trying to puzzle through things. So just know that you are not responsible for the initial training. That will occur on the 5th. And but it's really to be kind of a support person. And we know that you don't have all the answers, but to be the person in your building kind of willing to try things out and to be the contact to get the answer. So we want you to have the relationship with Ellen in particular, so that you can better support the teachers in your building. So we will work on all those pieces, but that is all I have. Any additional questions from y'all? Dr. Fitzgerald.
I don't really have a question, but I just want to make a comment. I know here at Mill Creek, we're kind of, I teach 11th and 10th, and we're kind of all over the place with vocabulary, and we're not really using one set thing. And this has been so informative, and I'm very excited about piloting this and getting people on board with it, because I have noticed, like with my juniors, my CP juniors will be taking like a unit test or a county test, and they will ask me 15 times what this word means, what that word means. Their word comprehension is very low from spending the past year and a half on a computer and not having that development of vocabulary. So I am super excited about this.
Well, thank you. It's needed.
Yes,
and you know,
it's needed.
We drifted. I mean, that's the thing. We knew that this work was important, but we have doubled down so much on reading strategies that even at the district office, we've drifted away from this. But what we are finding right now with our kids, and again, this has been exacerbated by the pandemic, is that our kids are struggling with reading at the word level. And it is interfering with their ability to comprehend.
Yep.
So we, and I appreciate you being like a champion and a cheerleader for it, because that's what we're going to need to do. Because we need to remind our teachers that, yes, we do need to devote time for explicit vocabulary work.
I'd like to offer a ringing endorsement of the Sadlier product. I've used it before. It works great. One of the benefits to using this with the English language learner community is that it provides, we tend to focus on Greek and Latin roots, but a lot of the English language learners, they're native Spanish speakers. They've got the Latin roots. This has the Germanic roots that they struggle with. It's pretty easy to assign a subset of the words and just have them be responsible for 10 at a time and that sort of thing, so that you can differentiate for your English language learners or your sheltered classes pretty simply. This is easy to use. It's very robust. If we can just get around the, it would be great to be able to use the online assessment functionality. But it's also, if you can't, it's easy to generate a hard copy of the quizzes and just test them create a zip grade answer sheet or similar if you need to. So this is, I think, a really, really useful tool for the right set of students.
Yeah, thank you, Diane. And that, that's a pretty solid endorsement coming from one of our most experienced teachers of English language learners, definitely one of our strongest. And, sadly, your vocabulary has been around for a long time. And let me just say this, a product doesn't have to be brand new and sexy and glitzy to be the right product. It does not. It needs to be based on research, and it needs to be something that we have evidence of being effective for our Gwinnett kids. So I don't really care what's happening with kids, Charlotte Mecklenburg. I care, my niece goes there, but I care most about what's right for our makeup of students. So, just know, I mean, there's a reason we're bringing this back out. And when people say, oh, Sadlier vocabulary, I've been using that since the 90s. Yeah, you have, and that's not a bad thing. So when we know things work, we want to use them. And so just kind of have that message in the back of your mind as well. So I'll set up the Teams group, Diane, with everybody on it. And I want you all to have a fabulous week and next week too, and then enjoy a very well-deserved holiday break for sure.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kimberly. And your words were just so profound. And we're recording, yay. So you're so just brilliant. Thank you.
And I'm not saying Sadlier isn't sexy, Jane.
I'll wear something better next time.
No, it's just, sometimes people think it has to be the brand new.
Exactly.
What is the newest thing out there, and that all doesn't always bode well. So
I love it. You're awesome.
All right.
I do want to make sure that everybody has their questions answered. There was one at the very beginning about assigning. The assign button, was that answered for you? I got the name. Okay.
Okay.
Is that a yes?
It looks like it.
Okay, great.
All right. Thanks, everyone.